I had it all planned out, our anniversary dinner at the steakhouse where we went on our first date. I thought it would be a nice way to celebrate, something special for the two of us. So when I told Kaylee the plan, I was expecting her to smile, maybe even get a little excited. Instead, she barely looked up from her phone, scrolling through videos from her friend's weekend trip. She didn't even pause to think. "I can't go tonight," she said, eyes still glued to the screen. "It's Alina's birthday bar crawl and everyone's going. It's a big deal." I stared at her, trying to process. "But it's our anniversary," I said as calmly as I could. She shrugged. "They've been with me forever. They'll be here after." The words hit me like a punch in the chest, and it felt like all the air was suddenly sucked out of the room. I didn't know what hurt more, the way she brushed me off or how easily she made me feel like an afterthought. I tried to hide it, but inside, I was spiraling. The idea that I wasn't as important as her friends, that I was just some backup plan, stung more than I wanted to admit. But I didn't say anything. Couldn't. What would be the point? She didn't even notice how much it cut. I spent the rest of the evening alone in our apartment, staring at the empty space where I'd hoped we'd celebrate. The silence was louder than any fight could have been. I spent the next few days in a kind of numb haze. I told myself I wasn't going to make a big deal out of it. Just let it go, let her have her night with her friends. But it wasn't just that. It was the same pattern I'd seen over and over. Like when she skipped my graduation because she'd rather be at Jasmine's housewarming. It wasn't even the fact that she chose the party over me. It was the way she acted like it didn't matter. "You'll be fine," she'd said. "It's just one day, right?" And then there was my cousin's wedding last month. I didn't even ask her to go, but I thought maybe she'd offer. She didn't. She said she was too drained after a weekend trip with her crew, like I should have understood. But when I pointed out that I needed her there, she said it wasn't a big deal. Her group was the big deal. That's what kept standing out. When my dad had surgery, I thought, this is it. She'll be there for me. I told her I was going to the hospital, but she couldn't come. She had her weekly trivia night with the group. "Thursday nights are for trivia," she'd said, like it was some kind of sacred tradition. But me, if she needed me to pick her up at 2 a.m. because Drew got too drunk to drive, I was her go-to. No hesitation, no complaints. I'd be there. I didn't even care that I was half asleep. The ride home was the worst part. She'd talk nonstop about her friends, about all the drama, all the gossip. And I'd sit there, pretending I cared, listening like I was some kind of Uber driver. She never asked about my day or anything that mattered to me. Then, one night, I overheard her talking to Brandon. They didn't know I was around. I wish I hadn't heard it, but I did. She was calling me clingy and jealous. I wanted to confront her, but I couldn't. Every time I tried to bring it up, she'd twist it around like it was my fault. She'd accuse me of trying to isolate her from her friends. I'd sit there, watching her, trying to make sense of it all, but she'd just brush me off, act like I was the crazy one. I didn't even know how to fight for what I wanted anymore. I felt like I was always the last priority, if I was even a priority at all. I wasn't asking for everything. I didn't expect her to choose me over her friends all the time, but I needed more than what I was getting. A little attention, a little respect. I'd given up trying to make her see that. I knew the time had come. I didn't want to make a scene, didn't want to drag it out any longer. So I found a small one-bedroom, about 20 minutes from work. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I signed the lease the same day I found it. Just wanted to get it over with. I didn't tell her, didn't say a word. I just started moving my things. I kept it quiet at first, slipping out while she was off with her group. Took my computer, some clothes, a few kitchen things. Small stuff at first, stuff she wouldn't notice. Then a little more each time. I moved in waves, like I was disappearing without a trace. And somehow, she never noticed. It was like she was too wrapped up in everything else to care about what was happening right under her nose. I figured if she wasn't going to see me, I wasn't going to make it easy for her to pretend I wasn't there. On the last night, I was almost done. The apartment was half empty. Furniture gone, most of my things packed up. I'd left behind the bare minimum, just enough to make it look like I hadn't fully checked out yet. But when she came home, She froze in the doorway, her eyes scanning the space. I could see her brain trying to process what she was seeing. "Aren't you moving out?" she asked, the confusion in her voice sharp. I stood there, staring at her, trying to steady my breath. I hadn't said anything to her, hadn't given her a warning. I guess I'd expected her to notice, to see what was happening and ask before it came to this. But she hadn't, and now it was too late. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I am." She stood there for a second, her lips parting like she was going to say something else. But nothing came out. It wasn't until the silence stretched too long that I finally walked over to the kitchen counter and slid a letter toward her. It wasn't long, just a few lines, but it said what I needed to say. I didn't want to drag this out any more than I already had. I needed to feel like a partner, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. Not a backup plan. She looked at the letter, then back at me, her expression still blank. I could see her trying to piece it together in her head, but I didn't think she was ready to hear it. She wasn't ready to understand. I'd spent so long waiting for her to notice me, to care enough to see what was happening to us, but it was clear now. She hadn't. Without saying anything else, I grabbed the rest of my things, zipped up my bag, and walked toward the door. I didn't feel angry or sad, just empty, really, like I'd been waiting for something that was never going to come. As I stepped outside, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I'd barely gotten to the door when I heard her voice, sharp and panicked. "Ethan, wait!" I turned around, and there she was, standing in the middle of the living room, eyes wide, face flushed. She looked like she might burst into tears or maybe just explode. I wasn't sure which, but it didn't matter. It was already too late for anything to go back to what it was. "Why didn't you say something?" she shouted, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you talk to me?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. She wasn't listening, just yelling, each word a punch in the gut. "You're punishing me for having friends, for living my life." She stepped forward, hands raised like she was trying to block me from leaving. "I thought you understood that. I can't just cut everyone out for you. They've been here for me for years." I didn't move, just stood there, trying to hold on to whatever calm I had left. "I'm not asking you to cut anyone out. I'm asking to be part of your life too," she scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, now I'm supposed to drop everything for you? That's what you want?" I felt my chest tighten. "No, I just want to feel like I matter, not like I'm just some backup plan when you're not with them." She rolled her eyes, shaking her head, like I was some kind of idiot. "You knew what I was like when we started. This is who I am. You can't change me." That hit me like a slap. The way she said it, it was like she was dismissing everything we'd been through, like she was handing me an excuse for everything. "So this is it? You get to treat me however you want, and I'm just supposed to accept it because it's who you are?" She started pacing, the words spilling out of her faster now, like she couldn't stop herself. "I've always had my friends. You knew that. You knew what you were getting into. Why is it a problem now?" I wanted to scream, but I kept my voice steady, even though it felt like my whole body was shaking. "Because I'm tired of always being second. I don't want to keep fighting for your attention, Kaylee. I can't keep pretending like this is okay when it's not." She cut me off, her voice rising again. "So you're just going to leave? You can't even try to fix this? You can't try to work with me?" "I have tried," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm done trying. I don't want to be in a relationship where I'm always the one asking for more, and you're always the one choosing everyone else." Her face twisted in disbelief. "You're giving up? Just like that?" I stared at her, every ounce of anger, sadness, and frustration weighing on me. "Yeah, I'm giving up. I'm done." I didn't think she believed me. She kept talking, kept trying to get me to stay, but I couldn't hear it anymore. I was already gone. I walked to the kitchen counter, took the key off my keychain, and slammed it down in front of her. The sound of metal hitting would echoed in the silence between us. "That's it," I said, voice shaking now, but not with doubt. "I'm done." She stared at the key like she couldn't quite process it, like she thought I'd pick it up again and walk back in. But I didn't. I turned and walked out the door, leaving her standing there, frozen. I knew I wasn't going to get the closure I wanted from her. But maybe this was enough. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. I barely had time to make coffee before Kaylee's texts started flooding in. At first, it was just her. Frantic, full of question marks, apologies, and pleas for me to come back. Please talk to me. You can't just leave like this. Why are you doing this? The tone changed from desperate to angry, then back to sad, like she couldn't decide what would make me change my mind. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Then the notifications started rolling in from her friends. Jasmine was first. What the hell, Ethan? You're breaking her heart. You're just leaving her like that. The message was followed by a string of crying emojis and a bunch of exclamation points like they'd make it hurt more. I stared at the screen, feeling my chest tighten. Brandon's text came a few minutes later. Dude, you're acting like a child. Grow up. I could practically hear the judgment in his words, even though we barely talked outside of the group. It didn't stop there. Alina sent a message too. I barely knew her. We'd shared maybe 5 words in the entire 2 years I'd been dating Kaylee. But suddenly, I was getting texts from her. You're abandoning her. You know how much she needs you. It felt like being hit with a sledgehammer. This accusation coming from someone I didn't even know. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't even know what to say anymore. I felt like the more I ignored it, the louder they got. It was a constant stream of buzzes, pings, and notifications that made it impossible to escape. I could feel the pressure building, like they were all closing in on me, trying to drag me back into the same toxic mess. By Sunday, the whole group was involved. They were piling on, one after another, accusing me of things I didn't even recognize. Jasmine was the worst. You're emotionally abusive, Ethan. You left without warning, and now Kaylee's destroyed. You can't just walk out on her like that. I wanted to scream at my phone, but I didn't. I knew it wouldn't help. The more I tried to explain, the more they would twist it into something else. Brandon joined in again, saying I was selfish and immature for leaving her, that I was throwing away something that could have been great. I just kept ignoring it. What else was I supposed to do? Every time I thought about responding, my stomach knotted up. I wasn't just fighting with Kaylee anymore. I was fighting her entire world. The messages kept coming. You're breaking her heart. She doesn't deserve this. You can't just walk away. It's not that simple. By Monday morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to work, but my mind was spinning with all the accusations. I'd hoped I could block it out, focus on something else, but it wasn't possible. It wasn't just Kaylee anymore. It was all of them, as if they were in some kind of group chat, figuring out how to make me feel like the villain. But I wasn't the villain. Not in my mind. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was just trying to save myself from being swallowed whole by a life that had stopped making sense a long time ago. Yet, here I was, getting buried in messages, feeling more alone than I had in months. I sat there at work, feeling like the constant buzz in my pocket was vibrating through my bones. How much longer could I ignore it? How much longer before I gave in? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. This wasn't about me needing to explain myself to them. It was about them needing to make me feel guilty enough to come crawling back. And I wasn't going to do that. I came home from work Monday, tired but feeling a little better. The constant barrage of texts had slowed down, and I thought maybe they'd finally gotten the message. Maybe they'd leave me alone. But as soon as I turned the corner into the parking lot, my stomach dropped. There they were, all of them, standing outside my apartment like they were holding some kind of intervention. Kaylee at the front, eyes red and swollen, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Drew, Brandon, and Jasmine. Jasmine had her phone out, camera angled at me like she was filming a damn documentary. Couldn't believe it. I had hoped they'd just move on, but now it felt like they were all standing there, waiting for me to break. Kaylee was the first to speak, her voice sharp, full of hurt. You owe me closure, Ethan. You owe me that at least. I stopped in my tracks, the words hitting me harder than I expected. I don't owe you anything, I said, trying to keep my cool. But she wouldn't let it go. Bullshit. she snapped. You don't get to just walk away like that. You don't get to make me feel like I'm the one who did something wrong. She stepped closer, but I didn't back up. I wasn't going to let her control the space like she always had. Drew piped up, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place. Maybe guilt, maybe frustration. You're hurting all of us, man. You think this is just about you? It's not. You've hurt everyone. I couldn't stop the laugh that bubbled up. You're all standing here like you're the ones who need closure. But it's me I'm worried about, Drew. I'm the one who's been hurt. Jasmine filmed the whole thing, the lens of her camera right in my face. She didn't even try to hide it. This is going to be good for her, Ethan, she said, a little too smug. You can't just act like you're above everything. This is real life, not some breakup you can walk away from. I shot her a look, furious. What the hell are you talking about? This isn't some reality TV show for you to profit off of. It's my life. I could see Kaylee's face twist with anger. We're trying to make you understand, and you're just shutting us out. You can't leave me and then pretend like nothing's wrong. You don't get to do that, Ethan. I was done. I was so done. They were all treating me like I was some villain who just decided to destroy everything. The guilt trips, the endless finger-pointing. It was all too much. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my body tighten, ready to snap. Get off my property. Now. They didn't move. Not at first. They stood there, like they were waiting for me to crack, to apologize, to say I'd made a mistake. But I wasn't going to. Not this time. Call security, I said, my voice flat. Or I will. Kaylee's eyes flashed with anger, but she didn't say anything. They still wouldn't move, though, and at that point I didn't care anymore. I pulled out my phone, hit the security number in my contacts, and dialed. Within minutes, security was there, walking up behind me, a couple of guys who didn't look like they were in the mood to mess around. I stood to the side as they approached the group, my heart pounding in my chest. But this time, I wasn't backing down. Kaylee's face went pale when they stepped up. You can't do this, Ethan, she said, voice breaking. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to argue anymore. Hey, one of the security guys said to the group, you need to leave. Now. They hesitated, looking at each other, like they were trying to figure out if they should just keep pushing, keep fighting. But when they realized they weren't going to win this, they started to move. Kaylee was the last one to go. She turned to look at me, her face still twisted with anger. But there was something else there, too. Something raw, like she couldn't quite believe I was actually going through with it. This isn't over, she yelled at me as she walked away, voice echoing in the empty parking lot. I didn't reply. I just watched them leave. And when the door to my apartment closed behind me, I finally let out a breath. Felt like I could exhale for the first time in months. They could say whatever they wanted, twist whatever story they liked. But I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The first couple of days after the security incident, things were quiet. I kept to myself, focusing on work and making sure my new place felt more like home. But even in the quiet, there was something in the air, a weight I couldn't shake. Kaylee and the rest of her group weren't done, not by a long shot. The text slowed down, but the ripple effect kept going. It felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it did, it came in a way I didn't expect. A coworker of mine, Nick, knew Brandon from some college stuff. I hadn't realized they'd kept in touch, but a week after the ambush, Nick pulled me aside in the break room. Man, I gotta tell you, their group's falling apart, he said, kind of half laughing but looking like he wasn't sure whether it was funny or sad. Brandon's engaged now, and he's been skipping out on all the hangouts. Doesn't want to hang with the crew anymore. Felt like a punch to the gut, but I didn't show it. I just nodded. That's, wow. Nick kept going, lowering his voice. And Jasmine? She moved out of state. Got a promotion, some big job. Kaylee's pissed about it, man. She says Jasmine's bailing on the group. It's getting pretty ugly. I couldn't help but wonder if she'd seen this coming, if she'd felt it creeping in. Was this the fallout from what had been building for months? Or was I just the first one to notice it? Yeah, Nick continued. And Alina and Drew? They're a thing now. Official. It's crazy. Kaylee's worried it's gonna ruin everything. He looked at me for a second, trying to gauge my reaction. She's not exactly handling it well, you know? I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt bad for Kaylee. She was losing her grip on the thing she'd been clinging to for years. The other part of me was just numb. This wasn't my problem anymore. Later that week, I heard more. Kaylee had started saying she was getting Ethaned. Apparently, that's what she was calling it now. How I ghosted her. How I walked away without warning. She turned my decision into a label, like it was some kind of trend. Every time I heard someone mention it, I felt like I was hearing my name in a foreign language, a word that didn't fit, didn't belong to me. But I wasn't the one who had changed. I hadn't walked away from her. She'd pushed me away over and over, and I'd finally cracked. It wasn't until I overheard a conversation at work, another coworker who had somehow ended up at the same bar as Drew, that I realized just how much things had shifted. "She's totally losing it," the coworker said. "All she talks about is how she's the one who's been left behind, and how everything's falling apart because of you." Kaylee was the one who had always been the center of it all. But now, the group was splintering, and she was stuck in the middle watching it all crumble. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about her world falling apart because she couldn't hold on to it. I didn't feel guilty about any of it. She'd made her choices. She'd chosen them every time, and I was just the guy who had the nerve to leave when it was clear she wasn't going to choose me. I wasn't going to be the reason for her to fix her problems anymore. I wasn't her safety net. But hearing about it, the way she was suddenly the one left behind, it hit harder than I thought it would. Maybe that was the real kicker for me. The fact that she was now the one feeling alone. Like I'd been feeling all along. It was a strange kind of justice, but it didn't make me feel any better. Just emptier. A week passed in silence, and I thought maybe she'd finally accepted that we were done. I wasn't expecting anything from her, wasn't waiting for some grand gesture. But then, one morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kaylee. "I've been thinking," she wrote. "I realize now what I did wrong. I wasn't trying to replace you with my friends. I just didn't know how to balance everything." I stared at the message for a long time. The words didn't feel real, like she was trying to force something into a box that didn't fit. I couldn't just let myself fall for the apology again. I didn't answer. She didn't stop there. A couple of days later, another text came through. "I get it now. I really do. Can we grab coffee and talk? No pressure." I tossed my phone on the bed and let out a breath, feeling the same mix of anger and relief churn in my chest. She was doing this again, acting like everything could go back to normal, like we could just pick up where we left off. Like I didn't matter enough to deserve anything more than this last-minute, half-hearted attempt to fix everything. I showed the text to Nick when we were grabbing lunch at work. He took one look at it and shook his head. "She's scared of being left behind, man. That's what this is about. She's used to being in control, and now you're out of the picture. She's not really sorry. She just doesn't want to be the one left alone." I couldn't disagree with him. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. She wasn't sorry for how she treated me. She was sorry she wasn't the one calling the shots anymore. I didn't respond to her message. I didn't have to. I'd said everything I needed to say when I walked away. But even so, I felt a tiny pang of regret, like maybe I should have been more understanding, more open. But then I remembered the way she had treated me. How many times she'd put her friends ahead of me. How many times I'd been made to feel like I wasn't enough. That day, I deleted the message. I couldn't let myself get sucked back into her world, into her drama. I wasn't part of her group anymore, and I wasn't going to pretend like I could ever go back to that. Kaylee had her chance. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting across from Claire at a little diner downtown. I'd been seeing her for a little while now, and it felt easy with her. No games, no pressure. She listened when I talked, actually looked me in the eyes, and didn't get lost in her phone every 5 minutes like some people. She was chill, laid back, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't having to fight for attention. We were halfway through dinner when I saw her. Kaylee. She was sitting at a table near the back with Drew and Alina, laughing, looking exactly like the Kaylee I remembered, the one who always had everything figured out. But she wasn't the only one who noticed me. Kaylee caught my eye from across the room, her expression shifting from something casual to, I don't know, a mixture of surprise and hesitation. It was like she wasn't sure whether she should come over, whether she had the right to. And for a split second, I almost thought she would just turn away and pretend like I wasn't there. But then she stood up. I felt my stomach twist. It was such a stupid reaction. Why was it still affecting me? I'd moved on. I was moving on, right? Kaylee didn't come straight over, but as Claire and I were wrapping up, I saw her walking toward me. My heart dropped into my stomach. She was probably going to make some big scene, try to get me to talk to her again. Claire noticed, too. Is that Kaylee? She asked, voice low. She wasn't nervous, but there was something about her tone that made me realize she could probably tell I was feeling unsettled. Yeah, I said, my voice flat. She's probably just gonna try and talk. I didn't know what to expect. She'd already texted me, already tried to apologize, but this felt different. More direct, more in person. When she got close, she stopped a few feet away, taking a deep breath. Can we talk for a minute? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. Her eyes were on the floor for a second before she looked back at me. I wasn't sure if it was shame or regret, but I saw something there that made me hesitate for a moment. I nodded, standing up slowly. Claire stayed seated, her eyes glancing between me and Kaylee, but she didn't say anything. I appreciated that. She wasn't trying to control the situation, just letting it play out. Kaylee led me to the side of the diner, out of earshot from the others. There was a long pause before she finally spoke again. I'm sorry, she said, and this time, I didn't hear any excuses. No, you knew how I was, or it wasn't that bad. Just the words, plain and simple. I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to, but it felt like if I spoke, I'd just let her back in, and I wasn't doing that. She'd had her chances. Kaylee continued, her voice cracking a little. I see it now, what you meant, how everything was falling apart. The group's not the same anymore, and I don't know how I didn't see it before. It's like I was so focused on what I wanted, I didn't realize how badly I was neglecting you. And now I see how alone I am. I could tell she wasn't just talking about the group. She was talking about everything. Her whole world was unraveling, and for the first time, she seemed to realize that I wasn't the one to blame for it. I appreciate that, I said, keeping my voice even. I really do, but it's too late. Kaylee's eyes shifted, and she nodded like she understood, like she'd been expecting this response, but it still stung her. I get it, she said quietly. I've been holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. She paused, her gaze locking with mine. I'm sorry, Ethan. I truly am. I took a deep breath, trying to hold myself together. I wanted to feel something, anger, sadness, even relief, but I didn't. It was just done. I'm moving on, Kaylee, I said, voice steady but firm. I have been for a while. I'm not going back. She looked like she might say something else, but then just nodded again. Her face was closed off now, like she'd accepted that there was nothing left to fix between us. I turned back to Claire, who was still sitting at the table, looking at me with soft eyes. I gave her a small, tight smile before heading back to the booth. Kaylee stood there for a moment longer, but I didn't look back. It was over. For real this time. A few weeks after my conversation with Kaylee, I started hearing things. Nothing direct, but the kind of stuff you pick up when you're still connected to people from that world. Word was spreading that the friend group was basically dead. Brandon's wedding was coming up, and no one wanted to bring Kaylee. Jasmine had moved to another city for a promotion, making new friends, and apparently, Kaylee couldn't understand why that felt like a betrayal. Drew and Alina were officially dating, but they were keeping it quiet, like they were afraid of shaking the boat too much. Kaylee kept trying to relive the good old days. Texting people, reaching out, trying to get everyone to hang out again. But no one was biting. Everyone had moved on, and it wasn't just me. She hadn't noticed when it started, but she could see it now. The group was falling apart, and she was in the middle of it, desperately trying to hold on to something that was long gone. I couldn't help but feel a little detached, like I was watching it from a distance, not part of it anymore. I had my own life now, one without the constant drama, without the guilt trips. Claire had become a steady presence, easy, supportive, but never overbearing. She made me realize how much I'd been giving up for a group of people who couldn't see me for who I was. And the more I spent time with her, the more I realized I didn't miss any of it. Work was going well. I wasn't juggling other people's problems, and I wasn't constantly fighting for a sliver of attention. Felt good to have time for myself. No one needed anything from me. There was just peace in that. I kept hearing about Kaylee, but I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I'd let that go a long time ago. I just wished she'd figured it out sooner, before everything crumbled, before I crumbled. But I couldn't carry that weight for her anymore. I didn't have to. I wasn't looking back. I had chosen myself and it felt good.